Guys, welcome to the fourth live edition of the Spoken Truth podcast, and welcome to the 16th overall episode of Spoken Truth. I go by the name of Danny.
I'm Chaz.
And today we're just going to be diving deep into the second round of the NBA playoffs, covering all of the game ones that you guys have witnessed over the last couple of days. And we will also be live discussing the second game with Milwaukee in Boston. Our other co-host Tunde should be joining us shortly, so we will keep an eye out on that. But right now, Chaz, before we get into the game, Boston seems to come out firing right now. But before we get into that, let's recap what happened in game one. What was your biggest takeaways from game one? You know, Giannis had, to his standards, a subpar game, still had a triple-double, still put up 24, with a handful of rebounds and a handful of assists. I believe it was 24, 13, and 10, 12, I believe, yeah. So even with the subpar game, the Milwaukee Bucks were still able to grab that win. What was the most significant thing you saw in that game one that gave Milwaukee that dub?
Yeah, there was three things that I thought were, kind of the main reasons that they were able to get that game one win. The first one, defensively, what I noticed with Boston, they were definitely overloading Giannis, making it difficult for him to operate in the post, setting a double team. I mean, they were defending him not exactly the same like Kevin Durant, but kind of that same type of mindset where they wanted to force it out of his hands and make other people beat them. Well, I mean, other people did beat them in game one. I'm interested to see how they defend him in game two, if they continue to do that type of strategy. And then in other areas, I thought Jaylen Brown was, he was kind of a no-show in that game one loss. He had 12 points, 9 rebounds, but he was 4 of 13 in 38 minutes. That's your second best player. You need him to be a lot better, especially in a game one at home. And then the third thing, and then I'll let you go, is this Marcus Smart injury, which, him leaving the game and then coming back.
And we just found out right before tip-off that he's out for game 2, so he's out for this game.
So, I mean, it's going to play an impact on this game and going forward. So, what were your thoughts on that game one, and how do you think the Smart injury is going to affect it?
I just think the overall dominance of Giannis was the reason why Milwaukee should be favored to win this series. I think they are, and should be favored to come out of the Eastern Conference. It's because I know we're going to talk about this a little later, but Giannis is the best player in the world. And if the last couple games and the last series and then the start of this series didn't prove otherwise, just look what he did last year. I firmly believe he's been the best player in the world since the last year's playoffs. So I know there is a lot of up and down when it comes to how do you define the best player. Do you look at skill set? Do you look at accomplishments? Do you look at wins? What do you factor into who's the best player in the world? Giannis is without a doubt overall the most dominant player in the game today, and I believe he's the best player. But it's just when you have a team like Milwaukee who wants to play physical, and Boston played physical with Milwaukee, they found out real quick that Giannis loves to play that way. So when you're feeding into how Giannis wants to play, he's going to dominate. This is not Kevin Durant. This is not the Brooklyn Nets where you're able to pound on the glass and also outwork, and be able to, win that series convincingly. Like, this is a team that wants to play hard, wants to play physical, loves to get after it. And they just have to change their approach when it comes to, we're not going to be able to out physical this team because they have too many, 7-footers. They have too many physical players, and that's their style and their brand of basketball. So we're going to have to outsmart them. Now, do I think they could do that? I don't think so, because I think Milwaukee to win this series, and we're going to, finalize our round 2 picks in the next couple of minutes. But I do think that Boston has an outside chance just because of the defense that they play. Now, we saw the last series, you're able to hold, one of the best players in this generation to subpar games 4 consecutive times, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at. And now you're facing a whole different animal who loves to play that way, but still, that's still impressive within his own. So I just think that the injury to Marcus Smart, and then Boston feeding into the way that Milwaukee wants to play, is a recipe for disaster for the Celtics.
Yeah, and I mean, you saw it. Like I thought they did a pretty good job of defending Giannis. To be honest, like forcing him to go 9 to 25, 5 turnovers. At times, I thought he was a little flustered. I thought a couple of times he missed layups that he would normally make. So I mean, it was a lot of the same things you saw with Kevin Durant, except you could see how Giannis impacted the game in every other area.
Being in one, without having to score, with the rebounds, with the assists, but the overall share of his game, he affects the game not just in one way. And this has been one of my biggest critiques of Durant. No matter how great Kevin Durant is, he affects the game one way. And that's if he's, I don't think that's true. No, if he's not scoring, if he's not putting up 30, 35 points, I believe that's the only way Durant affects a game. I mean, he's not the defensive stopper that Giannis is. He doesn't assist at the value that Giannis can, even though Kevin Durant, for a 7-footer, he has excellent handles. So, and he has a great passing ability, but he's not out there slinging the ball like Jokic. I believe
he doesn't like attack the basket like Giannis does, which draws so many defenders. And then Giannis is so good now at getting up in the air, adjusting his body, and making passes out to the passing lanes to 3-point shots. I mean, KD is a good passer in his own right. He's good in the pick and roll, but he doesn't attract the defenders going downhill like Giannis does. And that's what I thought won them game one, because even when Giannis was struggling to make shots, he wasn't going to stop. He was just going downhill.
Well, that's why I said I think Durant can only beat you one way. And if he's not putting up 35 points, 40 points, I mean, he could be neutralized in any other aspect. And then we blow it out of proportion when a guy has a triple-double and he gets 13 assists and he gets like 14, 12 rebounds, and he couples that with 35 points. We blow it out of proportion. And, LeBron has put up those same type of stats. So I'm just saying, like, he's not asked to do as much as other players are, especially if you're comparing him to, a LeBron or a Giannis. He's asked to do, what he's best at, and that's scoring the ball. But
Giannis has, to Boston's credit, Giannis has gotten off to a slow start tonight. 15-3 right now, Boston lead. Giannis is 0 for 6, and he just sat down on the bench. So, Boston needed to come out, with this game with a ton of energy. It's a must win, like you said before we got on here. So they're doing exactly what they have to do. Jaylen Brown has hit another 3. I think he's up to 8 points. He might have, as many points in this quarter as he did all last game.
Yeah. But what does, in your opinion, I know you have Milwaukee winning this series, correct?
Yeah, I had Milwaukee in 7 coming in.
Okay, so you have Milwaukee in 7, and I have Milwaukee in 5. But in 5, in your opinion, because I know what I believe the Celtics have to do, what do the Celtics have to do to win this series? What would get you to change your outlook on the Celtics being able to win this series?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, like I said, they're going to need a lot out of Jaylen Brown. I think that's the number one thing. And then I would say that they're going to need to limit those other guys, like Grayson Allen, Pat Connaughton, Bobby Portis. They all had good game ones. You can't let them all get off like that. I mean, you did a pretty good job of defending Giannis and Holiday, and yet they still combined for 50. So, I mean, the defense was pretty good in game one, but it has to be a lot better. But, I think it was 101 to 89 in that game one loss. So I thought most of it was Boston's offense was the reason that they lost that game.
Yeah, I just think Boston is firing on all cylinders right now. Let's tune into this game.
Yeah, Grant, I think that's his second 3. They're up 23-8.
They're up 23-8 with about 4 minutes and 30 seconds left. And you previously said that Giannis is 0 for 6 from the field. What have you seen differently in game 2 that the Celtics are doing that you didn't see in game 1 as far as defending Giannis?
I don't think it's anything differently that they defended him. I thought he just kind of settled a few times. I don't know how many 3-point attempts he had, but it looked like he settled at least twice. With those 6 early attempts, Jaylen Brown is cooking right now.
Mm-hmm. And I think Giannis is he's about to check back into the game.
Oh.
Boston up by 15 right now, kind of just came right out of the gate and hit Milwaukee in the mouth from the get-go.
Jaylen Brown has 12 points already. He just put Grayson Allen on the floor. Like, Boston's up 25-12. Obviously, Milwaukee's going to make a run to get back into this at some point, but it's definitely good to see Boston come out with this type of energy that they needed.
Absolutely.
Especially without Marcus Smart, because that's a huge loss. We've talked all year about how big he is for this team. What do you think they're going to have to get out of guys like Derek White and Peyton Pritchard, until Marcus Smart is able to return?
Just being able to hold. I don't just think it boils down to those two. Yeah. I think Boston needs to be overall that defensive team that we saw last series. And that starts with Tatum.
That's hard to do without Marcus Smart, though.
Yeah, but that starts with your two best players as well, because they both have the ability to be able to guard perimeter players. Now, I know he's killing them right now. He's 14 points, 5 for 6 from the field, and he has 2 rebounds right now. I mean, he's came out and started to attack in game 2. And that's kind of what they needed from him, because let's be honest, I believe Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown had a subpar game in game 1. So being able to come out and be, this aggressive and attack like this is a great sign if you're a Celtics fan.
Yeah, no doubt. He had 12 points in 38 minutes in that game 1. He's got, you said 14, right? In 7 minutes?
14, yeah. Mm-hmm. So what we know Milwaukee is going to make their run. But right now, what do you see as they drill another 3? They're blowing this open right now. Oh. Yeah, they're up 18 right now with about 2 minutes and 30 seconds left in this first quarter here. But what are you seeing from the Celtics other than, they're just making shots? What are you seeing, differently from Jason Brown and Jason Tatum? Is it just being ultra aggressive in this first quarter, unlike they were in game 1?
Yeah, I think it's, that, but it looks like they're, really creating quality shots right now. That last one, they used every single second of the 24 shot clock to get a wide open shot from Peyton Pritchard. But obviously they're 6 of 7 from 3. So they're really not having to do much else. They're just shooting really well to start this game. 30-12, 2:07 left in the first quarter. That's a pretty impressive start, shooting 61.1% from the field and almost 90% from 3, in this first quarter so far.
I don't know if I previously heard your response, but I asked you, because you're picking Milwaukee in 7, how could the Celtics win this series?
Yeah, I think they mainly need to continue to do what they did on Giannis in that game 1, but they have to do a better job of getting out to those shooters. And I think that's going to be really hard to do. I picked Milwaukee coming in 7, and that was kind of including, obviously with Chris Middleton expected to miss the whole series. I think maybe with him in there, it'd probably be Milwaukee in 6 or 7. But, now Marcus Smart, if he's not in this series, I think you could be right that it could be over in like 5. I'm hoping that he's able to return in game 3, but I mean, it's going to be really difficult because, like you said, it comes down to that Boston defense.
Is it the matchup? Is it the matchup for the Boston that is just so unfavorable?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, this is a really tough matchup, but it's a tough matchup for damn near anybody when you have Giannis on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I obviously think it's a bad matchup, but also Boston, I believe they have the personnel. No one person is going to guard Giannis. There's always going to be a team effort thing. But I do think Boston has the length and they have the personnel, they have the height, they have everything to contend with this team. I think if it was any other team that they're facing right now other than Milwaukee, they win. I believe they beat Philly. I mean, that's not saying much right now. We're going to get to Philly a little later. I think they
Miami,
I think they beat Miami. And a lot of people saying, well, Miami's the sleeper in East, and we're going to talk about and discuss Miami a little later. I think they beat anybody in the East, not named Milwaukee. So I just think that they're facing a team that just simply better than them. And I wouldn't even say roster to roster that Milwaukee's better from player to player. If I went from 1 to 15, I probably would say Boston has a better team. Um,
It's just a matchup.
it's just a matchup. I mean, Giannis within itself is a handful, and then you have everyone else that just feeds off him. So Milwaukee never looks glamorous. It never looks like they have the best team, because I believe Boston has a better team than them from top to bottom. But the reason why I think they're going to win this series is because they have Giannis, and Boston simply does not. So
Yeah, and I mean, I do think you are right that the Celtics are pretty equipped to guard him. Al Horford, Robert Williams, in addition to Jason Tatum, that's a pretty good core, as far as front court players to defend Giannis. But it's just so, you can't build a wall on him like you were able to a few years ago because he's so much more of a dynamic playmaker and passer and shot creator for others. And, he's obviously got a much improved mid-range game, turnaround shot, all that. So you can't defend him like that like you used to. I think because of this Boston defense, I do think they'll be able to squeak out, 2 games probably in this series. And if their offense really starts getting going, I could see them competing and, getting it to 7. And if Marcus Smart returns, I do think they have a real shot in this series. It's just losing that game 1 and Marcus Smart going down with an injury. That was a pretty big hit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we tune back into this first quarter, what about a minute and 30 seconds left? 15-27, Milwaukee. Milwaukee is going to eventually make that run that we know they're going to make, where they, try to get the lead, cut it to 10 or, get it to 5. So they're eventually going to make that run. They're just weathering the storm right now. The Celtics have to keep their foot on the pedal and keep going. Can this be a consistent thing throughout the series? Like, can they get out to these quick starts and just hit Milwaukee in the mouth and end up, surprising, folks and winning this series? Is that sustainable?
I think it is. I mean, you didn't really see it in that game 1 loss, with Tatum and Brown combining for like 33, I think it was.
Yeah.
But on any given night, they can combine for 60. So, if they can do that a few times in this series, I think they got a good shot in it. But, to your question, is it sustainable? I don't know. It's such a difficult matchup with them, and Milwaukee's defense, packs it in so well. Boston only had 10 2-point field goals made in that game 1 loss, which was like the second fewest ever in the playoffs. So it's so hard to score around the rim. If you're knocking down your threes like they are tonight, you can win this series. But if you shoot like you did in game 1, I don't think they can.
Yeah, and you're listening to the 4th live edition of the Spoken Truth podcast. You can find us on YouTube at Spoken Truth. You can also find us on Spotify. I have do a search Spoken Truth podcast and the search bar. We're going to be checking into this entire game throughout the entire night. We're going to bring you this entire game live. But right now, we want to touch on another series that's going on right now, and that's the Miami Heat and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, we know the latest on Joel Embiid, that he potentially can be out, game 2, and he could potentially be out for game 3. They haven't ruled out a return for game 3 yet. But knowing what we know right now, that he's going to be out for the second game, can Philadelphia afford to go down 0-2 against this Miami Heat team?
Oh man, that's a tough question. I would say no, as Jaylen Brown cashes in another 3 to put him up 30-19. I don't know. I just think that would be really tough. Even if you bring back Embiid in game 3 at home, it's going to be so hard to beat Miami 4 out of 5 times. I think it's possible, but I really think to have a good shot, they need to steal game 2.
They need to steal game 2.
What do you think?
I think if they lose game 2, is over. Miami cannot lose. Philadelphia cannot lose game 2 of that series. What's up, Tunde? How you doing?
What's going on, man?
Yeah, so
paradise with this playoff basketball.
absolutely. So
yeah,
I believe
Brown is cooking.
Yeah, I believe Philadelphia cannot afford to go down 0-2 in this series. I believe if they go down 0-2, it's only a matter of time. Maybe ended five, may possibly they will be swept. But despite all that, knowing that Embiid, throughout his entire career has suffered a lot of injuries, and you have to feel bad for him at the end of the day, not being able, because some of those injuries are just weird situations where it's not really his fault. It happens. But
Do you blame this on Doc? Not pulling him out of the game. I saw a lot of people doing that.
I mean, up 29 points. I mean, he shouldn't be playing in the game.
Right.
He shouldn't be playing in the game. Your best player shouldn't be on the floor. So he has to hold some responsibilities, but also I just know that freak injuries and shit happens when you're playing basketball. It does. It is one of those situations where it could have been avoided if he got pulled out when he should have been, or if he was playing, next game or so, it could have happened then. So I'm not going to say it's all on Doc, but I'm saying that in that instance, he should have been in the game. But for the 76ers, with Embiid out, Harden has to be the best player. And right now, James Harden to me looks washed. And Chaz, do you think he could ever reach that Houston James Harden again?
No, I don't. Not the Houston one. I think maybe he could be better than he is now. If he gets a full offseason, where he can really get this hamstring under control, and then hopefully come into next year's training camp in shape. That's probably the best case scenario. But where he's one of the most elite scorers, isolation scorers in the whole league. I don't think we'll ever see that again. I mean, he hasn't scored more than 25 in 11 straight playoff games. That's the first time that's happened since OKC. Like, I mean, I think we're definitely on the downturn of his career, and it's hard to go backwards once you're on the downslide.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you there, Chaz, that we're probably not getting Houston James Harden again. I think he's better than this though. Like there's just
you would think.
I think he's better. I think he's better than what we're currently getting from him, and that might be gone this year. Next year, I imagine we will get, a somewhat better version of James Harden. But I think the explosiveness in the first step might just be that. It might just be a wrap for that. Yeah. Also, how many times is Jaylen Brown gonna hit somebody with a snatch in this first half? This shit is crazy. He's just spamming. He's spamming the same dribble move. And this shit keep working.
Yeah, he got Grayson. He put Grayson on the floor with it, and then he got Giannis with it next time down. He was playmaking. He had that pass to Tatum right at the end of the quarter. He's playing great. That's exactly.
He's definitely looking aggressive. He's looking for a shot. He's definitely came out with that mindset that I need to score, and I play like dirt shit last game, and that has to change.
I was going to say yes. He was quite bad.
Yeah, absolutely. So transitioning back to Philadelphia, I know we both said that. Well, all three of us believe that James Harden can play better.
He has to.
Yeah, but I don't think it matters as much as no matter how, whatever, form of James Harden he has left, I don't think that translates into them winning a championship when he's the second best player. I don't think James Harden is at the level anymore where he is the second best player and you can win a championship. I think that ship has sailed. I don't think, I believe he shot 4 times in the second half. I mean, he's not aggressive. The first step is gone. He looks out of it. He looks out of shape. I mean, there's so many factors that's playing into why he's playing this bad, that even when he needs to be the best player on this Philadelphia 76ers team, he can't do it. And if I'm the 76ers, if I'm looking at my roster and I'm saying, well, I have Embiid and I have Maxey, who damn well probably is their second best player. And then I have James Harden, who's just floating around here. What am I doing here? And he's up for a 5-year max contract in the offseason. I just don't know if I give him that money, knowing what I've just seen over the last 2 years. I mean, it could be a lingering hamstring, but that's been an entire year. I mean, I don't know if we ever will see James Harden, even when he came back to Houston for like 2 weeks, a couple of years ago when he dropped back-to-back 30 bombs. I don't know if we will see that Harden again, let alone, the Harden that we saw in Houston.
Yeah, and I mean, he has to be better for them to have a chance in game 2. I mean, not only has he not been their second best player, you mentioned with Tyrese Maxey, potentially passing him, but Tobias Harris has been far better than him, at least far more productive than him in the playoffs. Again, yesterday he had 27, and he's able to get, good shots a lot more than Harden is right now. And that's something that we weren't used to seeing. But, Harden scoring 16 points yesterday and, not shooting. I think he was 2 of 7 from deep. Like you said, he only shot 4 times in the second half. That's not a Harden that we're used to seeing. And it's definitely not a Harden that is going to be able to lead them to a game 2 win.
I mean, he shot 13 times in their game 1. He ended up with 16 points. So not only is he, been inefficient for, a long time, he ended up being, I believe he was 4 and 13. So not only is he not efficient, not only is he not getting others involved, like we're accustomed to seeing James Harden average 10, 12, 13 assists. He's just not he's not scoring. And I don't know if it's not his ability to have that first step. He's not getting the foul calls like he used to, because half of Harden's points, a third of his points used to come from the free throw line. So now that he's not getting the points anymore, I mean, from the free throw line, they're not giving him the calls. I mean, we're just seeing a version of James Harden that we've never seen before.
I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with, James Harden, again, it goes back to the burst and him having a first step, his ability to accelerate, and really, most importantly, his ability to decelerate, which is where you see the step backs come from. Aside from his just pure physical, brute strength, those were his kind of calling cards as physical traits. And without that same level of acceleration and deceleration, he's a far less effective driver, and so he just gets fouled less. And again, clearly it's showing up everywhere in his game when he's got the ball. It hurts. I mean, yesterday was winnable for Philly. They really had a chance to take one on the road. It's tough. You're watching Miami without Kyle Lowry, kind of have to make things even more of a slugfest because they have even less kind of primary scoring ability on the court. And Kyle Lowry's out for game 2 as well, but like you have to take advantage of these situations in these playoff series, and you just letting one get away like yesterday at all hurts. I mean, there's not much more to say. They need him to be better.
Yeah. So you're listening to the Spoken Truth podcast on YouTube. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our Spotify account. All you have to do is type in Spoken Truth in the search engine. So let's take our second look live into this game. Now, Milwaukee is making a little run. It's closer than it was, a couple of minutes ago right now, with Boston being up 37-25 with about 8 minutes left in this ball game. Tunde, what are you seeing from Milwaukee's standpoint of kind of climbing back into this game?
Just staying the course. It's like with these playoff series, it really is a marathon, not a sprint. That goes from game to game, but also from quarter to quarter, and sometimes play to play. They're staying the course with a lot of what they got in game 1. We saw a lot in game 1 of Boston trying to double Giannis whenever he would pick the ball up in the post. Mm-hmm. So, Giannis might have the ball and go into an attack, right? Or try to, get downhill, make a move, whatever it may be. And when he would pick the ball up, they would send a second defender at him on the pickup. The issue with that, of course, is that when you're committing 2 to the ball, you're leaving 1 open. And in most cases, that like we saw in game 1, the person that Boston was sending was 1 pass away. And so it was just an easy swing back to that person for an open 3. Grayson Allen being the biggest beneficiary of those with the game that he had. So what we're seeing in this game is Boston guarding Milwaukee a lot more one-on-one, just with pretty standard help principles and just trying to make it as difficult as they can to finish at the rim. Milwaukee's climbing back into it with similarly pretty basic stuff, just some pick and roll. Giannis being Giannis, get downhill, create for others, drive and kick. Just keeping it really simple right now.
Yeah. So just to let the viewers know that we're going to be diving into the Western semis at the top of this hour. So we're going to be talking about the Grizzlies, the Warriors, the Mavs, and the Suns. But right now we're tuned in and dialed into this game right now. And I will propose the same question to you, Chaz. What are you seeing right now? I know that the kind of momentum just swung back into Boston favor in, the last minute and a half that Tunde's been talking, actually. So what happened from Milwaukee having the momentum to Boston, seizing that momentum back?
Yeah, from what Tunde said in that game 1, I thought it was really good for Mike Budenholzer to put Grayson Allen. It looked like he did that intentionally as the first pass away. Connaughton also hurt him really in game 1. They're not doing that tonight. You're seeing Giannis really struggle. He's 1 of 10 from the field. They're really, Horford and Williams these last couple possessions have been giving him like 15 feet of space. He will shoot that 3-pointer, but right now he's looking to create and get downhill like he was in game 1 a lot. They're not letting him do that. They're also staying out on the shooters, kind of forcing him to make a tough shot at the rim. He's not doing that right now. Like I said, he's 1 for 10. I expect Giannis to get going a little bit, but they're down 17 right now. It's going to be hard to climb all the way back into this one.
Yeah, and I think me and you said that this is a kind of a must win for Boston. I just don't think you could go down 0-2 to this Milwaukee team heading to Milwaukee. That's a tall hill to climb if I'm Boston. So I think this is a must win for Boston. But kind of moving from this series a little bit and kind of going towards the number 1 seed, who no one has just been talking about. I mean, no, I try to look at other platforms. I just look at other shows. No one is simply talking about the number 1 seeded Miami team. I mean, we touch on them every now and then, but no one has talked about this number 1 seed. Can this team legitimately win a championship this year?
I mean,
realistically,
yes. Yes. I mean, I'm gonna put it this way: we're down to 8 teams left. Of the 8 teams that are left, I'd put Miami at like. I'm gonna put it this way: if we're going in order, I won't say in order, but I think Phoenix is very clearly more likely to win. Milwaukee and Boston are both more likely to win. The Warriors are more likely to win. I think I have less questions about Memphis. So
they're like 5th out of 8 teams. This is the number 1 seed here. I mean, what is it? What is it about Miami that I know we're not confident, but other people are not confident. But looking at us 3, like, what is it about Miami that's like, I don't believe that this team can win at all.
For me, they just have a lot of specialists, and that makes things tough. It makes things tough to work when you have a decent amount of guys who, aren't necessarily able to put the ball on the floor like that. We see time and time again with them that late shot clock, late game, half court offense is tough. And in the playoffs, just generally speaking, it's pretty hard to get out in transition and go defense to offense. You have to have somebody who can break a defense down, or multiple guys really multiple guys who can break a defense down at a moment's notice. I think Jimmy Butler has shown the ability to do that over the course of his career, but he doesn't necessarily have the same scoring ability as, some of the guys on these other teams that are more likely to win titles than them. And Tyler Hero, has been great this year, but I would be nervous about being that dependent on Tyler Hero scoring and shot creation ability both for himself and others.
So Chaz, I'll kind of propose the same question to you. What are your concerns about Miami that keeps you from picking them to win it all? Yeah. Other than that, they're just not Milwaukee or, they're not Phoenix or Golden State. Yeah. I mean, even though they're number one, they're not those teams. But why is that though?
I just feel like they don't reach like a high level on either end like these other teams do. We've talked all season about how Boston can just get to another level on defense. Teams like Phoenix and Golden State operate on a completely different level offensively. When Drew, Chris, and Giannis are all together, and Brook Lopez are all together, Milwaukee is just different than everybody. You know what I mean? I don't see that from Miami. I see them being always, almost always consistent, almost always good, but very rarely are they great. And that's hard. That's hard to win a championship. That's hard to even win a conference championship. I think they're going to get out of this round, and I think that they can give somebody trouble in the next round. And when things are clicking on all cylinders, they are a really good team. I just don't, like Tunde said, they're probably, fifth right now, and for one seed, that's kind of weird to say, but, that's just kind of where we are with them. And I do think that they have a team that's built for the playoffs, which is why I do think that they can compete, and that's why they have been playing well, even through injuries from Lowry through Jimmy Butler. They've still been playing well, but it's just going to be hard to beat one of these two teams in the next round.
Yeah. Go ahead, Sunday.
Sorry. I mean, just real quick. I mean, I think Miami is very clearly an elite defense. If you question that, you could just go ask Trae Young. But
do you think they would be able to do something like that to Giannis or Tatum?
Trae Young, he's a small man, so just to be honest with you, he's very small. So being able to do that to Trae Young is, I'm not saying it's not an accomplishment, but it's not like you're doing that to, Kevin Durant, who's 7 foot tall, Giannis, who's just a freaking nature, LeBron James, who's just out of this, out of this world. So you're not doing it to those, level, talented players, those elite players. I mean, you did it to Trae Young. So, I mean, not taking that away, but I think Miami lacks a closer. I don't think they have. I mean, I know Jimmy Butler in the past has been the go-to guy, but I don't think Miami has that go-to guy that can kind of seal you a game. I know Jimmy is very sporadic when it comes to, scoring and doing everything on the offensive end, but he's a hell of a defender. But he's just too inconsistent. Their offseason moves, getting Lowry, then getting Tucker on the team, helps the defensive purposes. Also, Lowry being able to, score at the volume that he's able to. But like Tunde said, when you have Tyler Hero coming off your bench, and to be honest, he's your main vocal point on the offensive end, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. That's like saying that my best offensive player is going to come off the bench and they're not in the starting 5 lineup. So I don't think that's a recipe for winning a championship, especially beating a Boston team or a Miami team. I mean, beating a Milwaukee team. I don't know why I keep getting Milwaukee and Miami confused. Maybe it's because they're both M's, but
one of them days.
One of those days, yeah. Being able to beat a Milwaukee team with Giannis, I don't think Miami is equipped to beat those caliber teams. Not Phoenix, not Golden State. I want to pick them against Memphis. I want to pick them against the Mavs. I mean, I just wouldn't. So, I mean, for a number 1 seed, there's so many questions. And there's more questions than there are answers because this team in a regular season seemed to just float and just be on no one's radar. And the fact that they can very well win this conference and no one is thinking about them or picking them is just alarming to me because you're a number one seed and you have one of the top defenses in the league and no one's picking you to win your conference. I mean, that has to be a disappointment if I'm Miami. As far as, if I don't make it out of this conference, that has to be a disappointing season.
Yeah, I mean, I think they believe that they can still do it. Do you guys think if Chris Middleton is unable to play in the next series, or you still think Milwaukee?
There's no scenario where I'm picking Miami to come out of the East. I'm just being honest with you. I mean,
like barring another
injury. If Boston somehow wins this series, whoever wins this series, the one we're live doing, they're coming out of the East, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but you said somehow like that shit is just far fetched that Boston.
I don't think Boston could win this series. I mean, we talked about it earlier. You wasn't here. We made our official picks for this. We made our official picks for this series. So
Boston in 5.
I had Milwaukee in 5.
Oh yeah, that's something.
Yeah. Chaz, you had Milwaukee in 7.
Yeah.
So Tunde, who do you have?
I'll go Boston in 6. Yeah.
You going Boston? Okay. Why Boston instead of Milwaukee? What is the X factor for Boston?
I mean, first of all, the fact that Chris Middleton isn't playing is like that's a big fucking deal. That matters a lot. I think I would have picked Boston anyway, but it would have been that like fully healthy. These teams, it's somewhere around a toss-up. Without Chris Middleton, that's a problem. Nobody can guard Giannis, and I want to kind of acknowledge that. So this is not me saying, I think Boston is going to shut down Giannis. I don't really think that's possible. But I think they have, similarly to how it was with Kevin Durant, they have enough bodies enough guys to throw at him, enough switchability, enough versatility. Like you're seeing it tonight. They're playing off. They're playing off. They've got length, and they're just walling up at the rim, making his life hard. Now, there's a decent chance we hit like next game. Giannis is finishing all of those and dunking on people's heads. Because, you give somebody 15 feet of space with his, athleticism, and sometimes it just ends up being a runway for them to finish at the rim. But, I mean,
yeah,
I'm going to pick Boston because, again, I really, really believe in what they have to offer defensively. And I think you're seeing a lot of it tonight, both with Giannis, but more importantly with the other guys on the roster. Like Grayson Allen, went crazy in game 1. Tonight, they're not letting him just catch and shoot. He's having to make decisions with the ball in his hands. He's not doing a good job of doing that. And I think Boston's primary scorers are good enough for them to, kind of get over the hump here. I have some questions, as I do with Miami, about Boston in the half court, late shot clock, late game situations. Things can get a little stagnant with them. We saw that, I think, most notably in game 4 of that first round series. But they also won game 4 of their first round series, partially because, again, like Jaylen Brown is like just good enough. And
Giannis is abysmal right now.
More than good enough. You said what?
I said Giannis is abysmal right now. He's 2 for 11, 4 points right now. So he's out of whack right now. As Boston has a commanding lead right now with about 3 minutes. They're going to challenge that.
Yeah, they're going to challenge that. It could be an offensive foul on Giannis instead of being his second bucket, which would be an and one, and kind of stop the run that Boston is on right now.
Yeah, so it's about 3 minutes and 36 seconds left in that the first half. We're going to bring you that third live look when it gets back on. But real quick, because I know we picked this series right here, going back to Miami and Philly. Are we ready for some official picks for that one?
Yeah, start us off.
All right, so I have Miami winning in 5.
And are you assuming Embiid is back game 3? Because I feel like that's
I still think with or without Embiid, Philly would find a way to get one.
okay.
With or without Embiid, I feel like they get one.
You think they fall down 2-0?
Yes. Yeah, I think the only chance obviously I think they're going to lose the series, but I think Philly steals one at home.
Okay.
So,
yeah. I'm going to go Miami. I think if Embiid is able to play in game 3, I think it goes to 7. If he's not back till game 4, I think it's going to be 6. But either way, I'm going to stay with Miami. I just think, him not coming back until game 3, I don't really think they have a very good shot unless they win in game 2.
For sure. I'm Miami in 6. Yeah, I mean, not a lot to say. I think we've already talked extensively about James Harden. I think Miami is just a better team. I think Joel Embiid coming back obviously will have a pretty big impact on the series. But I think Miami's going to have a 2-game head start at that point, and that will just about make the difference.
Yeah, I don't think it will matter, especially if they go down 0-2. I don't think they come back from that. Even if Embiid is playing, got a MVP type level, I just don't think they come back from that. As we're getting ready for our third look live with Milwaukee versus Boston, you can follow us on YouTube at Spoken Truth. You can also follow us on Spotify. All you gotta do is type in Spoken Truth in the search engine. Chaz, where can they find you in your information?
Yeah, you can find me at Chaz_post23 on Twitter, and my link tree is in the bio on there, so you can click there for all my content.
Sunday?
Damn, I ain't got a link tree or a ton of content. I do have a Twitter handle and an absolute strap for a jump shot if you want to come find me at your local pickup basketball court. But Twitter is at KingTunde25.
Yeah. Just want to remind you guys at the top of the hour, we want to be discussing everything Western Conference and semi-finals. We're going to be talking about the Warriors, the Grizzlies, the Suns, and the Mavs. But right now, we're going to tune back into this third live look of Boston versus Milwaukee. So what are we thinking on this challenge here?
It looked like he kind of extended that arm. I mean, Derek White was kind of moving, so it'd be hard. I could see this going either way.
Okay, so they did rule it a defensive foul.
I was gonna say, so
they changed it to on the floor.
Did they?
I mean, that's not a charge.
That's not a charge. Yeah,
not offensive foul.
They must have called it on the floor then, right?
Okay.
The inbound.
I think they did. So Chas, take us into the mindset. If I'm Boston, take us into the huddle of how do we keep this lead if we're Boston?
Yeah, I just think they got to keep doing what they're doing. They're playing exceptionally well right now. On offense, they're getting great shots, working the ball around, driving and kicking. Tatum had just hit a 3 right there off an isolation. But, I mean, almost every possession in this first half, they've moved the ball deliberately, looking for quality shots. You didn't always see that in game 1. And then, we've touched on it multiple times how much they're getting Giannis to struggle right now, as I guess he's still 1 for 10 then. You force Giannis to be 1 for 10, and as Peyton Pritchard knocks down another 3. But if Giannis is 1 for 10, Milwaukee's not going to be winning.
He's actually 3 for 12 right now. I believe he's 3 for 12 with 6 points.
Picked up an and one there. Okay, yeah.
So Tunde, if you're Milwaukee, what are the steps to getting back into this game?
First of all, I mean, just hope Jaylen Brown misses a shot at some point today.
Right.
We could start there. Obviously, got to get Giannis going. Sorry, I'm a little bit behind y'all. I just saw Peyton Pritchard hit the 3. Shout out to white people in corner 3s. But anyways, you got to hope that Jaylen Brown misses at some point today. Got to get Giannis going. So what we're kind of seeing is like Boston is not as they do because they play this style of defense. Boston is comfortable with switching, even if it's like Derek White on Giannis. And when it's Derek White on Giannis, it's just that they're shrinking the floor on Giannis, making him see bodies. So I think the adjustment is gonna have to come from making sure the guys in the perimeter are in position where it can be a quick swing, and they've got to be ready to make quick decisions with the ball, whether that's attacking the closeout, making an extra pass, or catching the ball in a position ready to shoot it. The issue right now is that, we're not seeing the same level of help that we're seeing from Boston in game one. And if Boston is going to be able to guard, if Boston's going to be able to guard Milwaukee like this, where there isn't really, a ton of significant help off of the guys who are trying to spread the court, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. So as we continue our live look into this game right now, with Boston being up big 60-40, up, have a 20-point lead right now with about 2 minutes left in the half. We've talked about a lot of the adjustments. How can Milwaukee get back into this game, and how can Boston maintain this lead? When it comes to, if you're the coach and you have this 20-point lead, but you have the reigning defending champions on the other side, Chaz, what are you telling your team, to maintain their composure, knowing that they're up this big and knowing that 20 points in the NBA is nothing?
Yeah, I mean, Ime Udoka is obviously telling them that you can't let up, but I think this team knows that. I mean, you saw a second ago with the audio assist from TNT. Grant Williams is getting in the guys, telling them, keep it up defensively, keep playing at the same level. Like, you've seen that this team holds each other accountable, and they've really done that for the last several months. Really, the entire roster. Jaylen Brown still can't miss. He's up to 22.
8 for 9 from the field. I mean, just an incredible showing from him, knowing what he put up last game. He came back with a point to prove. And right now, Boston up 22 points. As we're closing this half. Let's just tune in for the remaining 36 seconds of this first half to see if, if Milwaukee can, get a couple stops. They got a couple more possessions. See if they can narrow this down. They can't narrow it down much. But to, get this lead more manageable in the next 36 seconds or so, heading into the halftime, they still have a whole second half of basketball to play. And knowing, the NBA, in which we've all watched it and covered it, being up this big at halftime is nothing. 5 to 10, 5 to 6 minutes with 3 or 4 stops will get you right back into this game.
They left Jaylen Brown wide open. Why you can't leave 8 at 9 and you leave him wide open on the wing?
I think the thing that's making me laugh about all of this with Boston is that in game one of the biggest issues I had with Jaylen Brown is that it really he was chucking. So he was chucking in game one, and it's like, I mean, I don't think he's necessarily creating a ton of shots for other people or anything like that. He's just, everything he's putting up is going down.
Milwaukee just looks out of sorts. I mean, they look uncomfortable. Boston has made them look uncomfortable in this first half. It's the defense, it's them attacking, it's Jaylen Brown coming out being ultra aggressive. Jason Tatum has had a quiet first half. It's been Jaylen Brown for the most part. And they need that. They're 13 for 20 on threes right now. Now, obviously, I don't think that's going to continue. I don't know the way that they've been shooting the first half. I don't expect that to continue the second half, but having this cushion of a lead and having Jaylen Brown to play how he's playing, Jason Tatum's going to come along with the party. He's just not going to, be quiet this entire game. So Boston should be going into the locker room feeling very confident, but also you can't sleep because you have the reigning defending champions on the other side. And, that team is not going to lay down. But we've reached halftime of this game, and now we're at the top of the hour. and we're shifting to the Western Conference. So right now, the Warriors and the Grizzlies, maybe other than this, probably this series is probably the most intriguing series, this round. We have a young, up and rising star in Ja Morant and a young, hungry Grizzlies team going up against a lot of veterans and a lot of experience, individuals and personnel on that other side in Golden State. For me, there was key moments in that Grizzly and Warriors game that the Grizzlies should have walked away with that W. For one, there's the flagrant 2 on Draymond Green got him out the game. No matter, we're going to talk about that. Should have been a flagrant 2, should have been a flagrant 1. In my opinion, based on Draymond Green's reputation, if I'm judging it based on a basketball play, I think it's a flagrant 2. So I think he should have been ejected from the game, knowing all of his history and baggage, and knowing that if you're Draymond Green, you can't make that play. Now, personally, I say it's a flagrant 2, but knowing how they manage and they ref Draymond Green, he has to be smarter than that to not do that. 2, Klay Thompson missing free throws. Yeah, Klay Thompson missing free throws down the stretch. You got Klay Thompson being abysmal to his standards the entire game. 3, you have Steph in foul trouble. Steph had 3 fouls in the first half. He picked up his 4th in the third quarter and got his 5th with 5 minutes left in the 5 minutes left in the 4th. So you got Draymond Green ejected. You got Klay Thompson missing how Klay Thompson usually don't miss. You got Steph Curry having 5 fouls in 5 minutes, and then you have the inexperience of Ja Morant and the Grizzlies. All of that ties up into a recipe for disaster for Memphis, because Memphis should have won game 1. There's only so many factors and ways that you can slice it. I can slice a pizza and I could put it in squares, but it's all going to end up the same amount of pizza. So, it really is. So I believe that the Memphis Grizzlies blew a golden opportunity to beat this Warriors team. They had them right where they wanted them, and they took their foot off the gas, and they ended up losing because they don't have the experience of a Steph, of a Klay, of a Draymond Green, of a Golden State Warriors team that's been there, done that before. Chas?
Yeah, I didn't think that they came out of that second half, with the focus that they really needed, and Golden State definitely did. You really saw Steph get going early in that third quarter. Poole started to pour it in, and Golden State kind of used that Draymond ejection the other way, and they were the team that started playing with the momentum. And Memphis can't allow that to happen in game 1 at home. That's like you're saying, that's an opportunity that you have to secure. And I'll also throw in that Steph missed a wide open 3-pointer, with a few minutes left.
Yes.
That's another break.
Memphis allowed 3 offensive rebounds. Memphis got out-rebounded by the Golden State Warriors.
Yep.
A smaller team that got out-rebounded by the Golden State Warriors the entire game. 3 key offensive boards for Wiggins. Klay missed, Steph missed. Klay got it back again and ended up sealing it for the game that ended up being the game-winning shot. But the defense of Gary Payton, the defense of Steph on the last kind of the steal or block on Ja, just being out of control with, his dribble penetration. And, that last shot for Ja really didn't have no business even, he had no business shooting that. Because if you have the experience of a Golden State team, when you have Wiggins coming off the pick, looking at the rim, and then you have all of this gravitation going towards you because you know that you're going to probably go to the cup, and you have Klay Thompson moving off his man, you have someone opening the paint. All you got to do is lob it backwards.
We're talking about the last play with the 4 seconds. They go full court. Pass it up. Ja gets the ball back with a full head of steam.
Yes, full head of steam. All you have to do, because Wiggins is off his man, Klay completely moves off his man and goes towards Ja. So literally, they all crash to the paint, And all Ja have to do is realize that I have 4 people surrounding me, and I have one person. I forgot who it was that Wiggins came off of, but I know the guy had a wide open dunk. If all Ja had to do was throw it back, I have to go back to see exactly who was in the middle of the paint. But if you have the experience of a Golden State Warriors team, if you have experience of a Milwaukee, you have experience as a championship level team, those are plays that you don't miss, because that would have sealed the game for you.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they got a pretty good look out of it. After watching it back a few,
It didn't even touch the rim.
No, but I mean, that's a shot that Ja can make. I think if Clay doesn't redirect him, I think Ja probably does finish that. I
think that was the whole mindset of the Warriors. They knew what he was going to do. So we're going to spy on Clay's defender. We're going to pull Clay off his defender and redirect to Ja.
I don't think that was something that was. I think that was Clay in the moment.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that was Clay in the moment.
Here's my thing, right?
Yeah.
That's the same play they ran. That's the same play they ran in Game 5 when Anthony Edwards gambled for the steal in the first round. It was the same concept. So
they ran against the Timberwolves, right?
You said what?
They ran it against the Timberwolves, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Your opponent. Your opponent was the Timberwolves.
So the point that I'm trying to make is that Klay Thompson just did a great job there with that play. Even then, it's a layup it's an extended finish at the rim for Ja Morant. I think you will live with that every time. If you watch the play back, the reason, even besides the fact that there's like 2 seconds on the clock, that ball doesn't go back to the middle to Brandon Clark, is that Andrew Wiggins.
Is it Brandon Clark?
Yeah, it was Brandon Clark.
Okay.
Andrew Wiggins, the same way we talk on a pick and roll about tagging the roller. If you have, the pick and roll, somebody slides from the corner to take the roll man. Andrew Wiggins, tagged Brandon Clark on that play. So you can't really throw the lob because Wiggins is there. There's not really enough time to get in the corner and to get the ball to the corner because there's 2 seconds left. And if you watch, Jordan Poole is splitting the difference between the 2 guys. So the amount of time that pass is going to take to get to the corner, Poole is going to close out, and then maybe you could make a one more pass. But the right decision in that situation is just to try to finish it.
But I think the Warriors game plan for that. I don't think Klay Thompson was going. I don't think Klay Thompson like, okay, I'm just going to stick to my defender. I believe Steve Kerr drew up that design to trick the opponent because Wiggins didn't even contest Clark. When Ja got the ball and had a full head of steam going down, Wiggins immediately crashed to the paint. And he left Clark wide open. He left him. Klay Thompson, he left his man.
No, he came over to help Clark. Clark is who Klay left, yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. So who was in the
I think it was Bane and Brooks in the corner and on the wing, I believe.
Yeah. Okay, so but it was
Clark is being guarded by Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson slides over, to make Ja's life harder on that drive. Andrew Wiggins immediately came down.
But who was Wiggins guarding?
It was Bane. I think it was Bane in the corner.
So he left the corner, but there's not enough time to get that to the corner because Jordan Poole is coming from where Dylan Brooks was.
But Klay completely left his man, though.
Yeah, he left Clark.
But he wasn't open. And I'm saying Andrew Wiggins came and took it.
I think there was. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go for it, Chas.
Well, I mean, after watching it back several times, I thought there was maybe a split second where Ja, once he saw Klay came off, he could have gone back to Clark real quick. And then Clark, before Wiggins came over and helped completely, he either would have had a floater or Tunde, like you said, he would have had, rotated to either the corner or the wing. But that would have been, that was a split second that Ja would have had to make that decision. And, I think he just said, I have just as good of a shot to get to the rim. But Klay pushed him off far enough where he wasn't able to get the right touch on it. And Wiggins also came down to eliminate that and to eliminate, a potential tip in after the miss. Like I thought the Warriors executed it perfectly.
But I think my whole point was that Klay, his whole intention was to never guard Clark. I think his whole intention was that I'm going to guard Ja because I know exactly what play they're going to try to run. Yeah, I know exactly what Ja's going to try to do is he's going to come down full head of steam and we're going to crash the paint on him. and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah,
So
he said that in the post game that he knew. I don't think they knew what type of play was going to be, but once he saw it, he knew that Ja was going to get it and try and get downhill. And once he saw that happening, he immediately.
No, I'm going to spy off Clark. I'm going to spy off Clark. And I'm going to end up guarding Ja. And it seemed like everyone on the Warriors crashed the paint. I mean, but that comes from experience. I mean, that comes from we've seen what you've done previous series, and you can't run the same game that you ran on us that you run on that team against us. So I mean, I
thought they should have tried to decoy Ja and maybe go for an open.
Yeah, that's what I would have. That's what I would have done. I mean, because we know that Ja, he's at the top of he's in the middle of the court. So ideally, you're gonna think, okay, he's gonna get this ball, and he's gonna try to run with a full head of steam. I would have tried to use him as a decoy to get someone an open shot. I mean, I know Baines was off, but Jackson was on fire. I mean, that guy couldn't miss from three. He had a career night. I mean,
he was on the court, right? Was he in the other corner then?
I believe he was in the other corner. It was him, Baines. I think we lost Tunde. It was him, Baines, Ja, and I believe it was someone else. I'm not too familiar with all of the Grizzlies players.
Yeah, and I mean, like we're saying, I think it would have been, a good idea to possibly have Ja be a decoy, but Bane and Brooks were struggling all day, so that would be really tough for Taylor Jenkins to draw up.
I mean, because you have the assignment of guarding Steph, and you have to guard Poole. I mean, I'm not saying that's excusable, but you're wasting so much energy trying to, follow these guys because Steph is nonstop moving, and then you have to try to some way get 15 points, 15, 16 points. If I'm Memphis, I mean, I just believe that Memphis had a golden opportunity to actually win that game, and that was if anything, that was their best opportunity. I mean, because the Warriors they're not going to make those same mistakes that they made in game one. And let's bring up the sixth person that helped them, the officials. I mean, it seemed like Memphis got every damn call in the book.
I don't know why they didn't. So they couldn't have reviewed that, where it went out of bounds with like 4 seconds left.
But the thing is, it hit off Memphis, but they went off Memphis, but they couldn't review it. So they said instead, because we don't know exactly who it went off of, everyone with eyes could see that went off Memphis. But clearly the three refs they didn't see that.
So if they just called it a jump ball, if they would have made a call, would they have been able to review it, or could they only
review that because the Warriors don't have a challenge.
Okay,
they don't have a challenge. And
I think you got to make a call in that situation then. Like, I mean,
but at that juncture, the refs do not want to decide the game. And they believe it, whether they believe that they're not deciding the game or not, they actually do. I mean, when it comes to that type of situation, the refs like, okay, we're going to make the call that's safe for us, and we're going to just do jump ball. Instead of giving the ball to the Warriors, clearly everyone saw it was off Memphis. But that's neither here or there. Apparently the refs didn't. So, instead of making that decision of saying, okay, it's going to be Memphis ball or Golden State ball, Golden State doesn't have a challenge. It's less than 2 minutes left in the game. So at that point, you can't review it, especially if you don't have a challenge.
Dumb. You should be able to review
it. It's dumb. It is. It has to be an official review made by the refs. It can't be made by a team if they don't have a challenge. So you can't call a timeout and the refs to go look at it. No, they have to deem it as, okay, we're looking at this as an official review. So instead of doing that, they say, okay, we're just going to jump the ball up.
They should have just made a call, and they should be able to review that like they used to be able to before the challenges came into place.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, but I just think it was a golden opportunity wasted by Memphis.
It definitely was, and I mean, how many times are Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr. going to combine for 10 3-pointers made? I mean, I'm not saying they had to win that game, but they kind of had everything go their way, and they still weren't able to come out on top.
I mean, everything went in their favor to me. I mean, the calls, the swings, the momentum swings in the game. Obviously, they had the crowd. But it seemed like every single big time call went for Memphis and went against Golden State. Then you have Steph not playing a Steph game. He ended up 24, but he was kind of inefficient a little bit. You had Klay Thompson that's completely off, and then you got Draymond ejected. I mean, and you had 10 points. You had a double-digit lead. So if I'm the Warriors, I mean, they went in down 1 at halftime. I have to look up at the score and be like, dang, I'm only down one after all this doesn't happen. And I'm like, okay, I'm sitting pretty. So I mean, obviously we can expect that the game in the official, especially in game two, where they have, the most hated official in Chris Paul's standards, that's refereeing this game. I think everyone hates Scott Foster. I think everyone hates
so too.
He's going to be the head ref for game two. So, Chaz, what do you see the outcome of game two being? Because I believe this is a must win for the Grizzlies. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a must win too. Coming in the series, I had Golden State in 6. So I think Memphis gets one tonight, evens up the series. But it's going to be really difficult because Golden State's not going to relax at all. They're going to try and get a 2-0 lead, and Draymond's going to play inspired, coming back from the injection. So it's going to be tough. They have to play even better than they did in game one. But I think Memphis is going to get it tonight.
Sunday?
Can you hear me?
I don't think we can hear you.
No.
I don't think we can hear you. No. As Tunde get his mic situated, I'm sorry. As we said as you just said previously, that Memphis and Golden State are playing up next on this doubleheader. And what are the keys to the success for the Warriors, Chas?
For the Warriors?
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to. I think they did pretty much what they have to do in game one. The Warriors are such a consistent team that they rarely kind of get out of form. That they do what they do almost every single game. You said it, even with Curry kind of struggling a little bit at times in game one, they were plus 10, I think, with him off the court, which is, something we don't always see when he leaves. So I just think that they have to continue to play at that level. I would say just if Poole and Clay and Curry, if you get 2 out of the 3 of them going like they did in game one, then I think they got a great shot to win this game. And if all 3 guys really get going like they were in that Denver series, then I think Memphis is definitely in trouble, that this series could be over in like 4 or 5. They definitely have to win tonight.
Yeah, I kind of agree that we both think that this is a must win for Memphis. Let's now take our fourth live look into this Boston Milwaukee game. Now, this is the start of the third quarter. With about 10 minutes and 50 seconds left in the third. Milwaukee down actually 41-65. What are the keys to success for Milwaukee to try to continue to try to pick at this lead that Boston has built?
Yeah, this is going to be tough. 24 is a pretty steep hill to climb. I think the Mavericks were down by like 21 last night, and they did a pretty good job of hanging around and actually making it competitive in the fourth quarter. So, there is a chance for Milwaukee to get back into this one, but they got to be really, really good in this third quarter. And I think it's going to start on the defensive end. Boston's been shooting the lights out. It's hard to, even when you're playing good defenses, if a team is shooting at this level, but you can't let somebody make 13 3-pointers in one half and expect to have a shot in that game. So they're going to have to get out on those shooters. They're going to have to make Jaylen Brown uncomfortable. And then, like we've been saying, Giannis is going to have to actually get going. It's looking like this might just be an off game for him. And, they regroup and go back to Milwaukee 1-1. But he gets an and one right there to possibly cut the lead to 21. So, maybe he can get going, but it's going to take a pretty big effort when it's this big of a lead.
Yeah, I kind of agree. Let's see if Giannis, if that bucket could get this, this team going a little bit. Because, it kind of looks like they're out of it. It's kind of one of those games, kind of how we're having today. Just out of it, not at, 100% best, but being able to, see if they could push through this here, even though, they're down. But, stepping aside from our live look, I wanted to propose a question that I proposed at the beginning of this playoffs. And I believe we all had different answers because, obviously there was more teams in the playoffs. But now that we're down to the basketball Elite Eight, who has the most to gain from winning a championship this year? Chaz?
Well, Tuna, you're back. Can we hear you?
Can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. How about you start it out, Tunde? Who has the most to gain winning a championship this year?
Just real quick to double back to the question I was asked before. I think Memphis wins tonight. But to answer this question, who has the most to gain by winning a championship this year? I know one of you is going to say James Harden, so I'm not going to say James Harden. And I'm assuming the other one of you will say Chris Paul, so I'm not going to say Chris Paul.
I don't think either one of us is going to say either one of those players, to be honest.
Make me look good and do what I said, goddamn.
Did you want to say one of those, Chaz?
I won't now.
See, this is why I'm always fucking with you guys. No, I'm actually going to say Giannis. Yeah. I mean, I think with back-to-back championships, which would make, realistically back-to-back finals MVPs as well, we start having to ask ourselves some questions about Giannis, his all-time status, about the fact that at age 27, 28, he would have, 2 championships, 2 finals MVPs,
regular season MVPs,
2 regular season MVPs, a defensive player of the year award. And I think we would start looking at Giannis all time, and we would be like, people would be like, people would start saying things like, is this a top 10 player all time? Is this, X, Y, and Z? So then, we start talking about his place amongst the all-time greats, and, he'd be putting himself in some rarefied air. Not that he's not, basically there already. So,
yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with you that we will start to have that conversation of where does Giannis rank as far as the greatest players to ever play.
I heard Bill Simmons say, I think he was in like his top 30. Do you think he's already there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Top 30?
Oh yeah, yeah. I said if he won another, I'm saying if he won, are you saying top 30 now?
Yeah, you think he's top 30 all time right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I think with the one Sunday, do you agree with that?
I would say so. I mean,
yeah.
A couple years back, Chaz with the some of the other stuff we were doing, we made a top 50. Do you remember that? And I want to say like the guys I had chilling around 30 were like Allen Iverson, Steve Nash. I mean, I think I'm comparing Giannis to like Allen Iverson, understand the impact that he had on the world of basketball and the impact that he had on the culture of basketball. But I would take Giannis. So.
Yeah, I definitely would have him in the top 30 right now, even if he doesn't win this year.
And if they do, you think,
he enters the top 15. He enters the top 15 for me. I couldn't go quite 10 yet. Because just off the top of my head, I can name 10 people that's better than Giannis. Michael, LeBron, Magic, Hakeem. You got to go Shaq. You got to go Kareem. I got to go Larry. I got to go Kobe, Tim Duncan. That's 9 right there. I mean, and then you start having these conversations.
You say Will Chamberlain and
you have
Bill
to
Russell?
go Will. You have to go Hakeem. You got to go Steph. You have to go KD. I mean, where do you rank these players? So when you start looking at the top 10, he's not quite there yet. I think when people judged all-time great status, they try to look at where players are right now. And that's kind of not fair because although I believe Giannis is the best player right now in the world, he's not an all-time better player than Steph or Kevin Durant. So I believe when we look at stuff like that, people try to put it all together, and I'm like, you can't put it all together like that, because although Giannis is better as he just hits a jumper right there, although he's not better overall a player like all-time great than Kevin Durant, he's a better player than Kevin Durant right now. So when I'm looking at that, when I look at all time and I try to rank these players, I can't put him in that category yet. But to answer that question, I mean, I've been on this train for a very long time. I believe Steph has the most to gain from winning another championship. Another championship, as I said so many times, another championship will give him 4. A finals MVP will give him his first. All-star game. It's kind of turning into a season similar to Giannis. He won all-star game MVP. He won a finals MVP. He won a championship. If Steph duplicates that type of year, I don't see how you keep Steph out of the top 10. I just don't see how Steph Curry, with the effect that he had on the game, with the amount of championships and experience and MVPs that he has, I don't see how you keep him out of the top 10. I don't feasibly see how you put someone else in the 10th spot if it's not Steph. I think he's already surpassed Durant on the all-time rankings, but that would solidify him past Durant if he was to win this championship here. So, I mean, I think he has the most to gain and the most to lose, because if he gets to the finals and he loses, people are going to start saying, oh, well, obviously you're not going to move him from his greatness, but then you start looking at other players like Giannis, like Durant, and they could potentially pass him on that all-time list, especially if, Giannis wins a championship. They're going to start looking at that. And although it's 2-3, they're going to start looking at stuff like that Giannis, the way that he did it was more dominant. And, he won it last year and he did it again back to back. They're going to start using all the recency bias to start, putting Giannis in that conversation, and which, fair enough, he deserves to be there. But I think it can be a good thing for Steph and a bad thing for Steph. And I also think it solidifies him as being the second greatest point guard ever. I mean, I think he's already there. I mean, if he gets another championship MVP, I just don't see how you put another point guard in front of him other than Magic Johnson.
Yeah, I don't even think you can right now. I mean,
I just don't know.
I love Isaiah Thomas and Oscar Robertson, those guys more than anybody, but Steph is better than them.
Yeah, I just don't know. I think it was slam the door on that conversation. I think it was slam the door on Steph being the top 10. I think it was slam the door being an all-time rankings of where he is. It was slam the door on him being the second greatest point guard ever. And then you start looking at other things that he could, because to me, theoretically, he could pass Magic. If he builds up more of a resume, he can pass Magic. If he matches Magic in rings and the way that he did it, I want to put it past myself to say Steph is better than Magic, but we're not at that point yet.
I think if we were being real honest about Steph's career, for whatever reason, people disrespect Steph Curry in a way that has never made sense to me. Like, if people would let themselves be honest about what he's already accomplished in the NBA, it really isn't blasphemy if you think he's already a top 10 player all time.
That's true.
Like, that's not crazy.
That's not crazy. No,
not crazy to say that. But
the reason I can't do it yet is because of the Finals MVP. The reason why I can't, like, on my list, the reason why I can't say Steph Curry is a top 10 player of all time is because he doesn't have a Finals MVP. And then I look at every other person in the top 10, they have a Finals MVP.
Fair enough. Which is crazy because 2015 was.
Yeah, well, he was the rob of the century.
I mean, yeah, they should have given him that shit.
The rob of the century. There's no way. I love Andre Iguodala. There's no way Andre Iguodala should have been the Finals MVP.
I understand why they gave it to Iggy is because, starting him,
that he held LeBron to 30+ points, but
starting him is what jump started, the back half of that series where Golden State ran away with things, with the additional ball movement and his passing ability and his, he did a great job guarding LeBron, truly. I understand all of that. Steph averages like 27 a game on efficient splits and is the engine behind everything they do offensively. That was his finals MVP that year. So
yeah, but I just can't put him there yet because of the finals MVP. I mean, if he had a finals MVP right now, he would be top 10 for me.
I think that's fair. Yeah, fair.
Yeah. So Chaz, who do you think has the most to gain
from
winning the championship this year?
Yeah, everybody we've talked about, Curry and Harden and Chris Paul and Giannis, all four of those guys mentioned. I think a championship would bump them up a level, from whatever they are right now. But I also think,
is Chris Paul top 5 point guard? I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I think he's probably 5.
5.
Do I think Chris Paul is a top 5 point guard? Yeah.
Of all time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think last year he solidified himself above, John Stockton and Jason Kidd and Nash and those type of guys.
Fuck John Stockton. I
agree. Fuck John Stockton.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heard it here first, folks. On
this is a PG show.
Podcast.
Hey,
sorry.
Fuck Karl Malone while we're at it too.
You said and George Karl?
Hey, him too. I said Karl Malone though.
Oh yeah. George Karl is the worst, but Karl Malone is. I will hold my tongue here a little bit. That guy is the worst.
He says George
Karl Malone is the worst. I heard George Karl somehow, but I also really, really don't like him.
Yeah, I hate him too. Yeah.
All right, but we got less than 30 minutes left on the show. We gotta get through all our topics.
All right, go ahead.
He called this man George Karl.
No, George Karl is George Karl, Karl Malone, Carl Winslow, whatever you want to call it.
Who has the most to gain from winning the championship, Chaz?
Outside of the guys that we've already mentioned, I would say it might be a young guy, like Tatum or Luka or Embiid. If one of those guys could win a championship, kind of a surprise one, before they really hit their prime. They're all at the the beginning of their prime, but I think all three of these players are going to get better and better over these next few years. And if they were able to get one early, kind of similarly to Giannis, it could really jumpstart where they end up, legacy wise. But for the guys that are already established, I would say, it's probably Chris Paul or Harden or Giannis or, Danny, like you said, Steph.
I think Chris Paul. I just feel so sorry for him, man. Because I don't think he's going to get it. I don't think he's going to get one. And he should.
It has to be this year?
It has to be this year. It has to be this year. I mean, the way that the landscape in the Western Conference is changing, when you have all these uprising stars, John Morant, all these young up-and-coming guns that's coming up right now, to me, this is now or never for Chris Paul. I mean, this is the Suns' biggest opportunity to win this NBA championship. I believe if they face the Bucks, I believe they beat the Bucks. I believe they figure out a way that they learn from last year's mistakes and they rewrite that wrong. I just they can't get past Golden State, man, in my opinion. I just don't. That's their hurdle. That's Golden State is in their way. And they're not moving. So, I mean, I feel so bad for Chris Paul because I don't think he's going to get one, but it will be a sight to see. That's kind of how I feel for Melo. Like, Carmelo, he's never probably going to get one. And I'm like, man, a great guy is not going to get a championship that a lot of people root for. I mean, it kind of turns into a sentimental favorite, for Chris Paul. And
just as good of a leader as he is, and, he's the point guard. He has been that for so many years. He is one of he's one of the best point guards ever. Like, it just feels like he deserves one. And I know we kind of got that last year when he finally got to the finals, and it felt like that celebration, but it still had to be, it had to sting for him to lose that at the end of it, even though it was a great year for them. But
I believe their opportunity was last year. I believe their best opportunity was last year. LeBron hurt. The Lakers are just dysfunctional. You don't have to worry about the Warriors. You had Kawhi Leonard, Paul George out. Last year was the year. Jamal Murray, Denver's done. Just think about it. Lakers hurt. Denver hurt. The Clippers hurt. Mavericks not even. No, nobody's thinking about the Mavericks. Utah Jazz stunk it up again. I mean, every way you look in the Western Conference is like they handed Phoenix the Western Conference crown on a platter, and all they had to do was finish it off with Milwaukee. And I picked Phoenix to win last year, and as I continued and started to watch the series, I'm like, there's no way Phoenix is going to win this series. I mean, when Giannis dropped the 50 bomb in that game, and I'm like, oh man, this dude is on another level. So, I mean, I believe last year was the year because you had the Lakers going through their injuries. You had Denver not 100% full strength. And we're not going to even talk about when is Paul George and Kawhi ever going to play again be a duo again. I mean, it's been how many years?
What did LeBron say when they asked him why Kawhi Leonard didn't want to join the Lakers? Ask Kawhi.
Yeah, that's what
Kawhi.
I mean, that team has so much potential. I mean, that team could win it all if they could stay healthy, but they just can't. So I'm believe that the door for Phoenix has shut. I mean, I believe if they don't get it, they don't get past this year. If they don't get it this year, they're not. And I'm picking the Warriors to win it all. So apparently, I don't have any faith that Phoenix is going to beat them.
Do you think the Suns are better than they were last year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The problem is the Warriors are better than they was last year.
For sure. Yeah.
That's the problem. It's not that Phoenix is any worse than they were last year. The problem is you didn't have to deal with the Warriors, or you didn't have to deal with a healthy Lakers team. Like, you didn't have to deal with those teams last year.
But you think if Phoenix does find a way to get through Golden State, you do think they have a good shot to win it all, though, right?
I will pick Phoenix to win it all if they got past Golden State.
Yeah.
I've been on the record since day one. I think the champion come out of the West. The NBA Finals champion comes out of the West. So if they
somehow
get past Golden State, I believe Phoenix gets the ring. And I believe they.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to ask, how much does that actually do for Chris Paul's legacy then? Because I think he got a bump last year. How much of another bump?
I think it bumps Chris Paul into – you have to start talking about Chris Paul being –
I mean, he doesn't
maybe a top 20, 25 player of all time.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to start having a conversation if he's in the top 25.
He's probably there for me already.
You think he's there already?
I mean, the list I made a couple years ago went through it very painstakingly, and like Steve Nash and like Allen Iverson are hovering somewhere around 30. I think I'd take Chris Paul over both those guys.
Yeah.
So he's somewhere around there. Again, it's hard to say like off the top of your head, right? You got to really like sit down and go through it.
Yeah.
It takes a while, but yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to continue this conversation, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Mavs and a little bit more about Phoenix before we leave here. But we're going to take our last live look into this game right here, as Boston still has a 20-point lead, 72-52, with about 5 minutes left in the third quarter. Obviously, Boston, they came out with their foot on the gas, and it's still on the gas. Still on the pedal. So obviously, what is your takeaway from this game, Chas? This game 2?
Yeah, I just think Boston came out and did exactly what they needed to do. I mean, you have to come out with more energy in game 2 at home if you're down 0-1. You know, I hope that Memphis, kind of follows a similar suit tonight. You just have to turn it up a level if you're down 0-1. You like we said, it's damn near a must win. And Boston came out obviously with that. It seemed like Udoka had this team ready to go, and that was something that I kind of questioned without Marcus Smart. Inserting Derek White into the lineup, were they going to be able to do it, play with that same level and intensity? And they've really blown them out of the park tonight. I mean, they're up 18 right now, so Milwaukee is still kind of hanging around. If they're one run away from kind of getting back into it, as Holiday cuts it to 16 and Udoka calls timeout for the Celtics. But they have the offense has definitely slowed down in this third quarter, so they have let Milwaukee back into it slightly.
I mean, if they can cut this lead down to 10 going into the fourth quarter, I mean, obviously we'll be gone off the show, but we definitely will be texting and keeping our eyes on this game here. Tunde, real quick, what have you seen from Boston to kind of have a stranglehold on this game two here?
I mean, they've been able to. A lot of it is being able to guard Giannis without adding extra bodies. Um, yeah, that's a lot of it. And they're just doing a really good job of walling up and not making it hard for him to finish at the rim. Part of that, a lot of that is to their credit. Part of it is him just missing. But the NBA is a make or miss league. I will say Milwaukee looks much better in this second half. I know it's hard to say that as we kind of introduce things with like a 20-point lead and all, but I think Milwaukee's looked much better in the second half. I would assume this game will get closer and fairly significantly so.
Yeah.
But it's just hard to make things work when you give yourself a 20-point deficit to try to work out.
Yeah, we may have to I know that you got to get out of here pretty soon, but me and Chaz may stick around for the conclusion of this game here, just to see if they can cut it down and make it a competitive game in the fourth quarter.
I should.
Go ahead.
I said, yeah, you mentioned me heading out, and I actually should probably do that.
Oh, so are you ready to skedaddle now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Tony. See you, man.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon, bro.
Talk to y'all soon. Until next time.
Game. Yeah.
So, Chaz, for this Suns and this Mavs series, what are you seeing specifically from Luka? That can, I mean, I know he dropped 45. It was a losing effort, but it's just something about him for me that I can't connect with.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. Maybe it's because of the overhype, I believe.
You think it's too much?
I think it's too much a little bit. I mean, he's a good player, don't get me wrong.
Right.
He's a good player, don't get me wrong. But people are starting to introduce him into, the best player in the world conversations. And that's just not the case. That's just not factual. But what are your take on the Mavs in this series? And can they actually, how competitive can they actually make it?
I think they can stick around in this series. If you want to we can do picks in a second, but I think they have a good shot to at least compete in it and, extend the series to 6. I think 7 is kind of maybe a stretch. But I think there's a good shot that they can at least stretch it to 6, get 2 wins in this series. It's going to be hard though for them to win this series just because Phoenix is so cohesive and they just run such a tight unit that, they don't really slip up for that longer stretches. We saw it happen a couple of times. Oh, Jaylen Brown almost put one down on Brook Lopez, but we saw them do it, kind of have lapses in that first round, I thought, against New Orleans. And I don't think they can do that as much now against Dallas, and especially next round, against Golden State. They're going to have to be, on it from tip to the end of the game. And I thought they kind of allowed Dallas to get back into the game a few times last night. Phoenix they were up like 21-7, I think it was. And then, like I said earlier, Dallas was able to get back into it. So I think Dallas has a shot, but guys like Jalen Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie are going to have to be a lot better than they were last night.
Is it just a lack of firepower from the Mavs? The reason why they can't, I mean, okay, let's go ahead and make our predictions now. Then I will explain to you kind of like where I was going with that. So I think that I have Phoenix in 6.
In 6? Yeah, that's what I had too.
I have Phoenix in 6. And the reason why I think that the Mavs could steal a game and they could have stole this series is if they had other offensive weapons that's kind of catered to the Suns. Because if you really look down the Phoenix Suns, their roster, Phoenix doesn't have a lot of they don't have a lot of offensive weapons. I mean, they have Devin Booker, who is the primary offensive scorer. They have Ayton, who could every now and then get you 25, but then he can also give you 11. You have Chris Paul, who doesn't look for his shot as often as he should, but he can get a shot anytime he wants. He's more of a facilitator first. And then you have Crowder, who's not really, he can make timely threes in contested or sometimes open threes. And then you have some bench players that can come off the bench and give you maybe 10 to 15 points, depending on, how they're playing. I mean, home teams, the bench usually plays better, but on the road, sometimes it doesn't travel. The reason why I say that is because I believe if the Mavs had enough firepower, this series wouldn't be as clear cut as it is now. I don't think it will be. I don't think it could have been. It would have been, 6 for, the Phoenix. I believe it could have been 7, and with, last shot and Chris Paul banking it in, or Devin Booker banking it in, or Chris Paul being clutched down the stretch. It would have took that to beat the Mavericks if they had more offensive firepower.
What do you think that spot is? Like, because Jaylen Brunson, he's had a breakout year, and I think they do want to pair him with Luka going forward. So, then you got guys like Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, Dwight Powell. Like, which out of those three is who you really need to improve?
I mean, I need better players than all of them, honestly. Like, I need a better player than all of them.
So you just like, you're looking like down the road for them to add like a front court player that can score and create shots for others.
They need to add a front court player that can be a stretch 5, but also can get, he could step out of perimeter and hit a 3, but also it could be a dominant force in the paint. The problem with Porzingis was he's 7 foot plus. He's a unicorn, but he plays like he's 6'1". And that was the problem with the Mavericks, is that they didn't have a big man, even though they had a big man. So a person that will fit perfectly, and I know he doesn't fit the mold of what I just said, but a person like Rudy Gobert, to me, with the pieces the Mavericks got, will fit perfect with that team. I believe if you paired someone like Rudy Gobert and you paired Brunson and you paired Luka, I believe that team is a good enough team to get you to a Western Conference finals appearance. Not win it, but it could get you there.
Yeah, I agree. I heard that, the Mavericks are one of the teams that are exploring, an option potentially this summer trading for Gobert.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see that, if that actually does happen. I agree. I think it's a good fit. I think Luka would be able to hide Gobert's weaknesses on offense better. And he is such an elite passer that, when Gobert is open, he would give him the ball. And Donovan Mitchell and those guys, they don't always do that. They'll see him open, and it's hard because, that team, Donovan Mitchell just doesn't trust Gobert to score the ball anymore. And he just doesn't think if he gives him the ball that he's either going to be able to score or that he's going to be able to get the ball back. Like, he just doesn't trust it. And I think, a fresh start, Gobert would have that with Luka. I think that's a good fit too. But, as for this season, do you think that the Mavericks have any shot to compete with the Suns and win this series, or you think it's over in 6?
I mean, they could be competitive en route to losing in 6.
Okay. You think no way they steal it?
No, okay. No way that they steal this series. I know people that's going out on a limb and saying Dallas is going to win this series. And
I think, didn't Draymond pick him? I heard somebody did.
I know Nick Wright picked the Mavericks. I know.
I did too. Yeah, I think Draymond did too. I heard a couple people. I was a little surprised. I mean, I like this Dallas team a lot too. And we saw Luka. I mean, he was getting whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
In that game last night, finished with 45, which is, I think, tied with Jimmy Butler for the high. In this postseason. When he plays at that level, they're going to be in these games. But like you said, without other guys that are really going to be able to kill you, and it's probably Jaylen Brunson that's going to need to play, at least for this series. He's going to play at a much higher level than he did yesterday. I think he just had like 13 points, and him and Dinwiddie really struggled to score the ball. And they really rely on those guys to get going. If Luka gives the ball up.
Yeah. So as the Celtics are kind of they're blowing this lead open. Is up to 23 now. What about a minute and a half left in the third quarter? So we touched on majority. We touched on all of the series, game ones, and this semifinal round in the East and the West. What series do you believe has the potential to be the upset series?
That's a good question. Well, who is the favorite in this Milwaukee-Boston? I guess it's Milwaukee. I think
Milwaukee's the favorite.
Coming in the series, I think it was Boston.
Yeah, coming into the series, it was Boston. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll kind of throw this one out of the window because I think it's pretty clear these are the two best teams in the Eastern Conference. But I think it would probably be that Philly versus Miami. If Embiid somehow finds a way to get back in Game 3, and maybe they steal Game 2 tomorrow night, maybe they go down 0-2. I mean, because Embiid missed the first two games a couple years ago, with the same injury. And I believe that they did steal one of those first two games, and that allowed them to win the series in 5. So, if they could somehow steal it without him, I think that's a series that could potentially go to the lower seed. But out west, we just talked about Dallas. I don't think they have that good of a shot. And then Memphis, I think they have times, where they can really match up, and they should be able to at times. Josh should be able to get to the basket at will. Not from start to finish every single game, but we saw, with certain matchups, he can get downhill, and I just don't think that Memphis would be able to do it, for four wins. I don't think would allow that to happen. So, I would probably say it's that Philly one that would have the best shot, but I don't know. I think the favorites are going to win, all three of those, and then with the exception of this Milwaukee-Boston, I'm still sticking with Milwaukee.
Yeah. So this is kind of tricky for me, because like you said, I believe all favorites will win their respective series. I believe we're firmly heading to a Memphis. I'm sorry, Phoenix Golden State clash in the Western Conference, and a Miami versus Bucks crash in the Eastern Conference. I believe we're firmly heading to that. But if I was to have to go out on a limb and say who could potentially upset those respective conference finals, I will have to agree with you and say Philadelphia could beat Miami if Joel Embiid came back in a timely manner. If Joel Embiid came back Game 3 and somehow Philadelphia stole Game 2, that is huge.
How good of a chance do you think they have tomorrow night?
I think it's slim to none. But if they did, I believe Philadelphia, I believe this series now becomes 50-50, in my opinion, if they split it 1-1 with Embiid coming back. I believe it now becomes a 50-50 series, and whoever outplays their respective opponents on that given game would win. I believe it would go 7 games if that was the case. But Philadelphia has to understand that tomorrow is a must win. The only way that this series becomes competitive is if they win tomorrow. If they go down 0-2, it's a wrap.
Yeah, and that, I mean, that's a tall task. We saw them compete, for at least the first half yesterday, but it just doesn't seem like they're going to be able to sustain that level without Embiid. I mean, I think they were 6-8 during the regular season without him. Obviously, you lose your best player, a lot is going to change. Tobias Harris was having to play a lot more inside. He actually played a really good game. He had 27 and 6, but I mean, he was being looked at to be the number 1 rebounder and the number 1 rim protector. And I think we all know that's not Tobias Harris's game.
Yeah.
And then, Tyrese Maxey, he played pretty well. James Harden played pretty well, but neither of them played great. Danny Green really struggled. I mean, if Embiid's not there, you need pretty much everybody to play well. And
Mhm.
they really that just wasn't the case. And then, I kind of wanted to get your opinion on this too. I saw a lot of people talking about DeAndre Jordan starting, and he played pretty terribly too. I think it was only in like 15 minutes, but I don't know. Like, do you think Doc should be starting him, or do you think they should go with one of the younger guys on the bench? It doesn't seem like he really does anything.
I would say go with a younger guy only because what do you have to lose at this point,
Yeah.
especially in that position? If Jordan's not giving, if DeAndre Jordan's not giving you anything in the time that he's put on the floor, I believe you have to switch it up a little bit. I mean, I know that's tough. I know these are tough decisions, tough times because you don't have your best player, but you have to figure it out. I don't know. Philly is just in a situation where they can make this a competitive series if they can win one game, but they could also get blown out in a sense, and this series could be theoretically over before it even starts. So they're in a situation where it can literally be tipped one way or the other.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Because I mean, imagine if they lose tomorrow night and then Embiid gets ruled out for Game 3, the series is over.
Series is over. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other way, you steal Game 2, and then he's ruled back in Game 3, and you got a pretty good shot.
If
Like
I'm
that, it might
if
be 50.
question, and
Yeah.
this is probably blasphemy to ask this, but if they're down 0-2, do I bring Embiid back?
I think if he can go in that Game 3, I think you do, just because if you can get that Game 3 back, you're theoretically right back into it. I mean, it would be really hard to beat them 4 out of 5 times, going from down 0-2 to win the series. But we have seen teams do that, so I think you give it a shot.
Okay.
What about
Because
you?
I will bring him back, but I'm very reluctant to because I don't know the long-term effect that these injuries can have on him, knowing
Yeah,
his
yeah.
history.
And he has two. He has two of them right now. He's got the orbital fracture, and then he's got the hand injury that I think he's going to have surgery in the summer. So I mean, you're looking at both of those. Like, we just have to avoid, making them worse injuries before the offseason.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But even if it's a situation where they get blown out in game 2, and then they're coming back for Philadelphia, and he's not making any type of progress. I mean, it's not getting worse, but it's not getting better. I'm risking putting him out there in live playoff minutes to start a game and him be the vocal point and the best player on my team. I just don't know if it's a. I don't just know if I'm Philadelphia management. I take that risk of putting him out there, knowing that we're not probably going to win this series anyways, and our superstar is banged up with 2 injuries. It can theoretically get worse. I just don't know if I take that risk, especially if they're getting blown out in the process.
Yeah, it's tough because with somebody like him, you just want to be so cautious. But when your season's on the line, it's hard not to be a little desperate.
Yeah, that's fair. That's definitely fair.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Doc Rivers has to have this team locked in, ready to go tomorrow night, because that's really the season on the line. If they can find a way to steal that game, they have a solid shot to win the series. And I just think, I think DeAndre Jordan has had a pretty good career. I just don't think he should be playing playoff minutes right now. And I think that's been the case for years. And I mean, he had like 4 points and like 2 rebounds in 17 minutes. I mean, there was like 3 possessions where he didn't even box out or jump for the rebound. I mean, you got to do something.
And they have
And
him starting.
yeah,
They
I
have
know.
him
Doc
starting.
said he's going to stick with him. And I mean, if you want to play him a few minutes, I just don't get it. And unfortunately, Paul Reed, I think Paul Reed should probably be getting the bulk of the minutes, but he had 5 fouls in 13 minutes. So
Yeah,
it's hard for him to even stay on the court. I mean,
yeah.
he had 9 rebounds. I think he had a lot more energy. Obviously, he's a lot younger than DeAndre Jordan, so Paul Reed would be an option. But if he's going to be fouling out in 15 minutes, then you kind of got to go with DeAndre Jordan. So it's tough for Doc Rivers right now without Joel Embiid.
But it's like I brought James Harden here for him to do James Harden things,
Yep.
and he's not doing James Harden things. It's just so tough if I'm Philadelphia. I mean it. It's just so many decisions that they have to make this offseason. And looking at should they give Harden the max contract? What are the things they're going to do to restructure their roster? Because this is a team that should be competing for the championship, and
for years to come too.
yeah, they're not looking like championship contending, like a championship contending team. If I'm being honest, but I don't know where they go from here, especially with the injury to Embiid.
I mean, I think they're gonna extend Harden, don't you think?
You almost have to. I mean,
yeah, I don't know what. I mean, you would have to try and look elsewhere and try and get,
but who's going to take? I don't know if anyone's going to take Harden right now.
I don't
the
know
way that he's playing.
I think he probably ends up staying. I mean, there'd probably be a market for him, but the price is just going to be so high for his level of play right now that it's just going to be a lot to take on. It's going to be a lot to take on next year, let alone, in 3-4 years.
3-4 years, yeah.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's definitely a predicament, but it seems like Philly kind of, they kind of knew that when they traded for him. I think that they knew they were going to extend him.
That's fair. I just don't know if he could be the caliber of player that they want him to be anymore.
I don't think he can.
Yeah, I don't think he can either. I'm just trying to be nice. But I definitely don't think he could be the caliber of player that they want him to be. And it's kind of sad to see. Especially
he wasn't even able to really like you said he shot 4 shots, I think, in the second half. That's that's a game without Embiid that I'm not saying you got to take it over and be the only one.
You should have at least 25 attempts.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to go out there and try and get his. He's one of the only guys on the team that can really hurt them, from the perimeter and in the paint and passing. Yeah. And yet he was just kind of out there going. Yeah.
He shot 4 for 13. He ended up with 16 points. So I mean,
and only 5 assists.
Yeah. So I mean, the Philly has a lot to try to manage and work out. As we're looking back into this Milwaukee Boston game, Boston still with a stranglehold on this game with about 8 minutes left in the game, 88-71 in favor of Boston. Switching gears back to this Grizzlies and Warriors series to kind of cap off the show here. I think this is the most intriguing series in this playoffs right now, because you have old school versus new school, and you have a lot of nuances going on. Memphis trying to figure out how to win. Golden State trying to stop the young Lions from dethroning them to a certain degree. And I just find it fascinating how these teams are going at it. They're physical. They don't take any talk. Any of that stuff. So looking at these two teams, what would you say is the most intriguing aspect when it comes to this Grizzlies Warriors series?
Yeah, I thought, watching that game, coming into the series, I had these thoughts, and then game one, how big of a role Gary Payton played. I think that's going to continue because I told you earlier that there are mismatches that Jock can have where he should be able to hurt them. And Gary Payton is one of those guys that can really take that away. I think it's going to be a lot of those role players for the Warriors that are going to have a huge impact on this series. I think Andrew Wiggins is going to play a major role. He played pretty well in game one, but I think on offense and defense, he's going to have to be really consistent for them to advance. And then as Giannis and Williams go down for a second. And then I also think that Jordan Poole on the other end, we saw him blow up in game one again for 31. But Ja is a liability on defense at times. And Poole is somebody that is going to be able to attack him. Clay, Steph, if they get those mismatches with Ja, I think they'll be able to light him up as well. So I think on both sides of the court, it's going to be how the defense adjusts to the other team's guards. That's probably what is going to determine the series.
I think just seeing the Warriors in this type of atmosphere again, it's exciting. Yeah. It's exciting to see. because over the years people are like, well, the championship window is closed, the team will never be that dynasty type of team again, and the Warriors just keep rebuilding and rebuilding and rebuilding and just bringing different versions of a dynasty back to the table. So this team has, and Steph Curry is still in his prime. Klay Thompson is still in his prime. Draymond Green is still in his prime. These are the stars of your team, and they're still in their prime with about 5 good years left, and including this year. So, being able to try to redefine who you are, restructure this dynasty that they have, and adding in the young elements of the team, the Jordan Poole of the Gary Paytons, to add in the mixture of the Kamingas, to add in all of your young core pieces that we're forgetting about. Wiseman, who may be probably the Warriors have done such a good job at drafting. He might be their worst pick that they've done in recent memory, and he hasn't even been on the court yet. So we know that he has a lot of an upside. And I'm using that as a good thing, because I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I'm saying he may be their worst draft pick, and he has the potential to be a good player in this league. So looking at what they've done and looking at what they have structure right now, I believe this can very well be another 3 to 4 year run for Golden State. I believe that they can tee off another 3 to 4 final appearances to go along what they've done almost a half decade ago. And going to those five, it wasn't even a half decade ago, it was only a couple years ago, going to 5 consecutive finals. So this team is starting. In 2018 was their last finals appearance, and they did 5 consecutive appearances. So trying to get that back and trying to start that streak over again, going to 5 consecutive appearances, then taking a break for 2 years, and then going, back, trying to get back to a finals. So, I mean, that's the most intriguing thing for me. It's not necessarily, it is the Grizzlies and the Warriors matchup, but for me, it's seeing the restructure, but also seeing the resurgence of the Warriors, quote unquote, new dynasty that they're trying to form and build with all of the young players. It's exciting.
Yeah, they've done such a great job of bringing these young guys in and translating them in with the older guys. And obviously guys like Steph, as we see him warming up for this game too,
Yeah,
and Klay and Draymond. Yeah, those guys are such great leaders, and they're so welcoming. And I mean, all they want to do is win. So like they see guys like Poole and Kuminga, and they see and Peyton, they see the energy that those guys play with and their desire to win, and they fit in perfectly. I don't know how many finals appearances they're going to be able to make, these next couple of years, because obviously the landscape changes like pretty much every year. Mm-hmm. But I mean, this is a team that's going to be in the mix for years to come because of how they're able to take this one era and push it into this other one. Like, I mean, they're doing it almost seamlessly. Like the last couple of years have obviously been hard since, they went to the 2019 finals. But I mean, you if you don't have those Klay injuries and all that, I still think that the team is still going to be good in those couple of years. And now that Klay's back, and now that Poole's at another level, like, I mean, we didn't even mention Moses Moody, who was a lottery pick last year. Yeah. Wiseman comes back. Like, this team has a lot of guys. Like that's 10 deep.
What would, and I don't know if this is a hot take here, but I'm going to say it anyways. I believe when it's all said and done, Curry will have the most championships in his generation.
So more than LeBron?
More than LeBron. I think he will have more championship rings than anyone in his generation.
And you don't think LeBron's getting any more, right?
I think LeBron's done winning championships. Yes.
Yeah. I think so too. Yeah.
I think he ties LeBron this year because I think they win this year. People keep forgetting he has 3. They keep forgetting that he has 3. So he ties LeBron this year. I think it's very possible that Steph wins 5 to 6 chips.
Does that put him in like the top 5 then?
That I don't know what that's what I'm saying. If
in
he
that
wins
conversation at that
six,
point.
if he wins six,
we
then
he's not at 4 though. We can't go to 6.
no, so if he went, okay, if he could get the 5, I mean,
It's somehow past
no,
LeBron.
if he was somehow past LeBron and win, we're going off on a limb here, but it's not impossible. Yeah. So if he wins 4, and then we start going into the conversation of if he can win 5, now you're starting to have the conversations of where did he rank in the top 9, like in a top 9. Where do you put him? Where did he? That starts to open the door of Steph Curry, the greatest point guard ever. That's when that conversation starts to happen. And you hear little whispers of it now, but if he opens the door to 5, possibly 6, if he gets to 5, if he gets to 5, he's better than Magic. If he matches Magic in rings, he's better than Magic. Because to me, I already think he's better, but I can't say that yet because he doesn't have the rings to prove it. He doesn't have the rings to back it up. But I already think he's a better player than Magic.
And I mean, this year is huge because we're talking about 5 and 6. If he could really realistically get 4 this year, then it does start to get 5 and 6 in that conversation. I think
not even 6, 5. If he
get
5,
yep.
If he get 5, I think he moves into that conversation of greatest point guard ever.
Okay, yeah, I think he's probably finished his career with 4. I think they got room for one more.
Okay.
I mean, you might be right that he gets 5. I'm not saying it's out of the possibility or anything like that. I think he probably wins one more. I think LeBron, like you said, I think he's probably done. So I mean, just tying LeBron, I think would be pretty impressive.
I mean, just tying LeBron, that solidifies 1 and 2 of this generation.
Yeah.
I mean, it solidifies 1, 2 generation. However you want to classify it. To me, I'm going to say LeBron's 1. But that solidifies 1 and 2 of this generation, bar none. And I mean, it's probably already 1, 2. But
yeah, it is right now. But I mean, I think there's ways that Curry could be caught by KD. But if he went up to 4, KD's still at 2. That's a pretty good amount of separation.
I think KD can catch him, but I think KD's done winning rings.
Yeah, I think KD. I think he might win one more, but I think you're probably right. He probably finishes with.
I don't think I think KD's done winning rings, and then that opens up the question again about him with the Warriors. I mean, it's so many other nuances that goes on with this. So many narratives. If KD finishes his career with 2 championships, and he got those 2 championships with Golden State, that the questions start to come in. I mean. Then it starts to go into another conversation that we've been discussing for the duration of this entire show that we've been doing it together. Of does those championships count? And you can't discredit a person for winning a championship, but you start to question like who was the driver and who was the passenger. You start to question all of those things that people are already questioning now, but it comes into a broader light because now you're done winning titles. And so it started to question who was the best player on that Golden State team because Steph got 5 chips. You got 2 chips. We're assuming Steph got 4 chips. You got 2 chips. So it starts to bring out those same questions that we have now, but it gets worse times 10 for Kevin Durant. But he can. I mean,
if Curry wins one, if Curry wins another one, then
if Durant never wins another one.
Okay.
If Durant, I mean, if he.
What if they never win it? What if neither of them win another one? Are you still questioning KD's?
I'm always going to question the legitimacy of Kevin Durant rings, but it's not going to be at the level of if he doesn't get another one. Because I believe if he gets one in the Brooklyn, his entire run at Golden State is validated. I believe if he gets one by himself, you would never hear anything about Golden State from me again if he gets one by himself. I believe that validates everything Kevin Durant has done.
Gotcha.
If he can pull one off himself.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really difficult to do.
I just don't know if I just don't know if he could pull that off. But if they all stay neutral, if they all stay, the amount of championships they have, I still have Curry ahead of him in the all-time rankings.
Yeah, me too.
And still ahead, and when you're comparing generations of who's a better player in their generation. But Kevin Durant,
I think they're very clearly 2 and 3 right now.
But Kevin Durant could absolutely catch Curry.
Yeah.
If everything is done the way that it has to be, winning another championship by yourself, I think that does it, honestly. I mean, if KD wins another championship by himself, I think that does. I think that puts him at second. But
like if you're assuming Curry doesn't win another
I'm
one.
I'm assuming Curry doesn't win another one, and I'm assuming Kevin Durant does. That ties him with Curry. He has 2 final MVPs. If he wins another championship, it's going to be because of him. So he's going to have a third Finals MVP. I mean, that puts him square ahead of Curry in that aspect.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously both fighting for a lot more than just their legacies head to head against one another.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are comparing them, it kind of does feel like if one of them can get another ring, it'll push them ahead of the other one.
Yeah.
But I will agree with you right now that Curry is ahead of it right now, and he definitely has the better team this year, obviously, and I think going forward. So I think Curry is more likely to get that extra championship.
To get that other extra championship than KD is. It's just going to be fascinating to see how the storylines of this postseason and then the NBA Finals plays out, and how the narratives are once it is the dust settles and we have a champion. And speaking of guys, we're still going to be doing the podcast in the off season of the NBA play. Once the NBA concludes, we're going to have full recaps for trade deadline discussions, trade deadline shows, what's next coming for the NBA, what's next, what are we looking forward to next season. So we're still going to be doing Spoken Truth at the conclusion of the NBA Finals. So stay tuned for endless, it seems like, content that we will be giving you guys. Because this is what we love to do. Any more questions for you?
Go ahead, I got a question before we move off of Steph. I think he needs 6 3-pointers to become the first guy ever to have 500 in the playoffs. Do you think he gets that tonight, or you think that waits till he goes back to?
I think that waits for Oracle.
Okay.
I believe the Memphis is going to play some good defense on Steph Curry, and I believe one thing about Steph is he's willing to pass the ball away. He's willing to defer his shot to make the right type of basketball plays. So I believe he has a better game than he had in game 1. I believe Golden State wins the game. I believe they win in game 2. I believe they go back up 2-0, and then Memphis steals 1 in Golden State, and Golden State comes back and finishes the job in Memphis. In 5. I believe that's how 2-2. They will come back and finish it in Memphis. Where it all started, honestly. That's where Golden State, their reign to dominance back in 2014 begun in Memphis. They beat a very good Mike Conley team. Zach Randolph team.
Trailed 2-1 in that series.
Yeah. They beat a very good Zach Randolph and Mike Conley Grizzlies team. So it's crazy how it could come all full circle if they were able to get, that game 5 or 7 win in Memphis. But yeah, it's very fascinating. We have a very intriguing playoff so far. What has been your best highlight of this playoff so far?
Oof, that's a good question. I don't know. It might be the Embiid game winner. Have we only had the 2 game winners, Embiid and Tatum?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Those are probably 1, 2 for me. But there's been a ton of. Oh, we had the Ja 1, 2. The Ja at the end of the.
Oh yeah. Ja.
Ja's dunk was another moment that's been up there. It's been a super exciting playoffs, and we're only in round 2.
Yeah.
But those game winners always feel a little different. That the Tatum one was pretty sweet, and then Embiid, coming around the curl and drilling it right at the end of the shot clock, on the road to go up 3-0. That felt like a pretty big moment too. But I mean, all of Jordan Poole's. I mean, his game 1 and game 2 against Denver were some of the most fun I've had watching games this playoffs. Like when Golden State is playing at that level, it's so much fun to watch. Like,
Yeah,
it's probably
absolutely.
more enjoyable than any other team.
Yeah, I call them the most entertaining team in the NBA just
Yeah.
because of the style of play, like the ball movement, how they pass the ball, how they set screens, set picks. They make it so fun to watch the raining threes, the step back threes, all of the shenanigans, all everything is so fun to watch that team play. And we're going to continue that conversation, but this game is actually getting pretty close. I mean, this is the closest Milwaukee has been since the big start of the first quarter. They're only down 12 with about 4.5 minutes left in his ball game. Giannis is up to 28 points now. His shooting percentages is kind of down. He's not very efficient today. You have to credit the Celtics defense for that. As Jaylen Brown is driving the ball here, and Jason Tatum has a wide open three and he nails it. Breakdown from the Milwaukee defense for sure. And just like that, the lead blooms back up to 15. Drew Holiday's in the paint. It's on Al Horford. And then he gets fouled. So I just don't think there's enough time left in this game for Milwaukee to actually have a legit chance of winning it. They made a run a little too late. But we've seen the breakdowns on defense from this Milwaukee Bucks team that we're not really used to. So just, kind of some misunderstandings, some miscues, and not switching on your man. So that's important. And I believe that momentum travels. So Boston now has the momentum. Let's see if this can travel to Milwaukee for game 3 to see how they could come out in game 3. If Boston wins game 3, this series becomes very interesting. It's already interesting now, but if they win game 3 and go up 2-1, this series becomes very interesting because I believe they will not lose a game 7 at home. I just don't think. I think Milwaukee, they have to win this in under 7. There's no way I believe Milwaukee's coming back for a game 7 and beating Boston Celtics at home in a game 7. That's kind of my caveat from this series. I believe Milwaukee's going to win it, but that's why I said in 5. The longer it goes, the more to me it favors Boston.
Yeah.
So I'm like you said Milwaukee in 7.
Yeah.
If it made it to 7, I will have to go with Boston. Tunde said Boston is 6. I don't know if that's true or not. I just think the way that it plays out and how my mind is thinking with the series, the longer it drags out, the more it favors Boston. The more it drags out, the more and more Milwaukee misses Chris Middleton. So I think they need to get it over as quick as possible because it could become very interesting if they lose game 3.
Yeah, I think you're right. And, game 3 isn't until Saturday night. So that's three night rest that Marcus Smart is going to get.
3 whole games, yeah.
That Marcus Smart might be able to return for game 3. And like you're saying, if they are able to win game 2 and game 3, as it looks like they're going to take this one tonight, all of a sudden, all the momentum is on their side. All the pressure is on Milwaukee's side, and it starts to look like, at 2-1, that looks like Boston would probably win that series. I mean, we're jumping ahead, obviously, but that's just how important that game 3 I think is going to be on Saturday night.
Absolutely, I believe I'm not going to say it's a must-win for Milwaukee because I believe it was a must-win for Boston today. But I don't believe it's a must-win for Milwaukee because I do think there still is an outside chance that if they got to a 7th game that they could potentially pull it out. I just don't have any faith in them doing that, knowing that it's in Boston, knowing that crowd is going to be wild, knowing that Boston is going to come to play, in my opinion. And having the defensive intensity that they have, I would not want to come back for game 7 if I'm Milwaukee. So
you're right.
Get it done as fast as you can, because as I said, the more it goes on, the more and more I start to miss Chris Middleton.
Yeah.
And someone made a blasphemous statement and saying that they look better without Chris Middleton. There's no way.
Who said that? It was only one game.
Charles Barkley said it, but yeah. So even they're saying they look better without Chris Middleton. I'm saying you can't look better without your second best player.
Yeah.
And the majority of the time he's your closer. So I mean, the quicker the better. The quicker they get ready and prepare for the next round, get him rest, and maybe he's probably going to play in the next round, hopefully. But the more rest that he gets, the better. I mean, we're going to start having even more conversations. I know we're thinking down the line, assuming that Milwaukee wins this, but what if Chris Middleton can't play? That opens up a lot more of, can Miami win this series? And I still may go with Milwaukee, but that's more of an indictment on Miami than it is praising Milwaukee, because I don't think Miami is that team. But it's going to be very interesting and fascinating this playoff round, and to see who makes it to those conference championships. I think the only clear one to me is the West. I think it's clearly that we're heading to a Golden State Phoenix clash.
Yeah, I think
I don't know about Philadelphia. If they get Embiid back, they could potentially win. Miami, I don't have any faith in them. And then this series here with Milwaukee and Boston is really a pick 'em. It really is. When you could say that Milwaukee won this, the game one, then Boston dominated game two, but it's either going to be that. It's either going to be a dominant performance by either team, or it's going to be a close as ball game. There's no in between. There's no 10-point wins, 15-point wins. It's either going to be a blowout or it's going to be a close victory. So it's one of those type of series. So we look forward to that. We look forward to bringing you more content throughout the rest of this playoffs and in the off season. If you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our YouTube page. Also, you can find every single one of our podcasts and all of our other content on Spotify. All you have to do is type in Spoken Truth Podcast in the search bar, and you can do the same thing as on YouTube. Do you have anything else for the people, Chaz?
No.
All right.
Did you want to wrap it up, or did you want to hang around for the end of this game? What is it? Down by up to 18. Boston's up 18 with 2:16 left. So I think it's probably over.
It's probably over. It's probably over. We're going to go on a big limb here, and say that this game's over. So this series is now tied 1-1, all even. We just touched on game 3, but do you think anybody has the momentum going in game 3? Obviously, Boston has the huge win today, but do you think that matters when they're going to Milwaukee? Like, do you think it's going to matter, or is it erase what we just did today? It's a whole new mindset, whole new game.
I think it's a whole new game. Obviously we do see sometimes where that momentum is able to carry, even going on the road. But like I said, with those 3 days in between, and also the fact that Milwaukee, they've been through this the last few years. They've made deep playoff runs, the last 4 years, really. So they know, that it's just one game, and that just put it behind you. I mean, they're like 3 of 15 from 3 tonight. If they're 9 of 18 or something, then they might be in this game. You don't know. So, I mean, you just got to put it behind you and hope that, come Saturday night, you play better. So, in some cases, obviously, like in that Minnesota-Memphis series, I think we saw momentum carry, pretty much game to game. But in this, I think both teams are so mature that they're going to be able to put this game behind them. I mean, Boston, they shouldn't take this game and feel comfortable. I mean, they have to come with this same type of energy next game too.
Absolutely. On that note, guys, we're gonna wrap up the fourth live edition of the Spoken Truth podcast. Once again, if you like what we do, please consider subscribing to our podcast. All you gotta do is type in the Spoken Truth podcast in your search engine as well. And we're also on Spotify, and all you have to do there is type in Spoken Truth podcast in your search engine on that platform. I go by the name of Denny, and you can follow me on Twitter at Danny Murphy Jr. 1.
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Chaz_post